The other actors after Star Wars had signed on to do 2 more because I wanted to finish the whole thing. Harrison did not. He said, I don't want to sign a contract. I don't want to do, I want to make each decision based on the script and how good the script is, not how, the fact that I have to do it. I don't want to get in that situation. I said, okay, I trust you. We'll do it one at a time. And so with Mark and Carrie, I didn't really have to worry. And so when it came to the 3rd film, there was that period before I'd actually given Harrison the script where there was a lot of speculation about whether Harrison was going to do it or not. I wasn't really worried about it. And Harrison never said he wasn't going to do it about it. He didn't even go back and forth. He simply, when I finally showed him the script, he said, okay, I'll do it. And that was about all there was to it. He had the idea, why don't you kill him off? Why don't you kill him off? But, I wasn't going to do that. He wanted me to kill off Indiana Jones, too, and I wouldn't do that. He just wanted some nice dramatic death scene, but unfortunately, I wasn't going to give it to him. Richard was a very talented director who, had done some suspense films, moody, scary pieces, and I thought, well, this is good. He's got a real good sense of creating, a lot of suspense without much story going on. And that's really why I hired him. And he was really good with actors. I hadn't realized at that point quite that, ultimately it was probably easier for me to do these things than to farm them out. But I just adopted a baby. I was kind of focused on that and a lot of other things, and I really wanted to spend time with my daughter. So I said, well, I'm not going to go on a set, for long hours and not see my daughter. This first year is very important. And she was literally, she was born while I was working on the screenplay. I just finished, I think, the 2nd draft of the screenplay, and Larry Kasdan was coming on, and I was having a story conference with Larry and Richard when she was born, and I said, well, this is great. So the first film, it was like spending time trying to get my company built up and getting myself independent financially from Hollywood. The second one was being able to spend time with my daughter. As it turned out, because it was even more complex than the last one, I really did have to end up being there every day on the set and working very closely with Richard and shooting second unit. And there was really more work than I thought it was going to be. But I was thankful to have Richard there because I did get to spend time with my daughter. I did get to go home, at 7 o'clock at night. I did, I could get her up in the morning and get her organized and then, go off to work, and she could come and visit me at lunch and do things that I wouldn't have been able to do if I was actually directing the movie. So, it's the challenge is always trying to do something that's all-consuming with having a private life. And I had made the decision after Star Wars that I had certain goals in my private life. One was to be independent of Hollywood. The other one ultimately was to have a family. And that those were priorities that were higher than this particular project itself. And, I've been trying to get a lot of directors to do Indiana Jones, and finally Steven said he'd do it. But there are ideas I come up with. I can help get them started. I can do it, but I'd rather have somebody else do the hard work and watch than actually do it myself. And I still am that way. Ultimately, I found out with something like Star Wars that I am so intimately involved in it that ultimately every question comes back to me, that there is absolutely no way to escape it. Indiana Jones with Steven, it's pretty easy to let him make the decisions. We think alike, we're very similar in the way we do it. We go through the script, we agree on things, and then it takes very little communication between the two of us to get it, and it always turns out more wonderfully than I could possibly do it myself. So I'm always very happy with that. This is a puppeteer using rods and everything, and they shoot it at high speed so that it makes it look more realistic. It's sort of the opposite of stop motion. This scene introduces one of the main characters that we'd never really seen before, but the sort of evil presence that is always overriding and always referred to in all the other movies. I want to make it this as important a scene as possible by having a large sort of May Day parade show of force. This is a scene where Obi-Wan and Yoda have learned how to join the Force at will and then retain their individuality once they are part of the Force, which is unusual. And that's the key to their being able to come back. It's their connection to Anakin and his being saved and resurrected at the end that allows them to have him, when he dies as Darth Vader, to be transferred back into the self he was before he was killed by Obi-Wan Kenobi, or maimed by Obi-Wan Kenobi, before he made his transition into Darth Vader. But it's only those who are trained in this special ways of the wills that can move to the Force, give themselves up completely, their physical self up completely, and transcend into a being of the Force with their individuality intact. With Alec Guinness, he wasn't really keen on playing ghosts, but he did do the second film and he did the third film, because he also believed that the story should be completed. And he understood my goals in the project. He understood that it was a large idea for one movie in 3 parts, and he kind of understood the larger picture of what I was trying to accomplish, as opposed to what's in it for me and all that sort of thing. In all of these films, one of the subtexts is that R2 is the silent hero in all these movies. He's the one that actually gets them all out of all the messes. We don't make a big deal out of it, but if you actually analyze them, it all really comes down to him. The Han Solo journey, it's a fun character to do. Of all the characters of this first trilogy, it's the one that has the most to work with. It's the kind of gruff, African queen kind of, I'm out here for myself, I've been out here, I know my way, I get around the galaxy, and you're not going to tell me otherwise. And it's always hard to be the hero. It's very easy to be the anti-hero. Star Wars was originally intended to be based as a visual film. I'm a big fan of silent movies. I have been since I was in school. And so in my mind, I was making a kind of abstract visual film, very much like my first film, THX, very much like my second film, American Graffiti. They're more visually oriented, and they're silent films with a soundtrack, with music, basically. I'm very keen on the soundtrack. I feel it's part of the movie, but I see the soundtrack as basically an accompanying score, even if it's sound effects or dialogue or whatever. It's just part of the accompanying score or the chorus or whatever. So when I did Star Wars, I was still in that mode. I still wanted to do it that way. I wanted to make it be kind of a silent film. And in a silent film, the score, the soundtrack, is extremely important in telling the story. A lot of it comes through the score and the soundtrack. You sort of deal with the visuals as an expressionistic way of telling the story, but a lot of the emotional content rests in the sound part. So when I went to find a composer, I was very interested in somebody who could do classical, old-fashioned, 1940s traditional Max Steiner, Bernard Herrmann scores. This shot is one of those shots where whenever you see a lot of ships in it like that, it's one of those shots that were very difficult to pull off. In this character, in this particular Enterprise, I even got the hero dressed in black, so it's all basically shades of black. It was specifically designed so when his hand is cut off and when that final confrontation with his son is, that there's a big red splotch of color, of red, right behind them. Just sort of goes symbolically into the blood of the father and the son and the move toward hell. Possibly because this is where it is. This is where he is either going to go to hell or not. And he decides not to. Acting with masks is a very ancient tradition. And it's the emotion of the story that can carry you through, and then the cinematic nature of cinema that you can, it's what shots you put on either side of the mask that tell you what the mask was thinking. Pushing the edge of special effects in order to tell a more interesting story, you're always sort of on the edge of having it not work. And then the whole film falls apart because it is a facade, it's an illusion. Especially a fantasy film of any kind, you're creating a fantastic illusion that people know isn't real. So you have to make it kind of super believable, even though it's impossible and can't possibly be real. And that's always been a big challenge for movies with artificial characters. And we worked very hard in that there's various levels of going into the Death Star, and each one's got a different shape, and they had to figure out the geography of how you go in, geography of how you come back out, and what the core looks like was different. They had to go through all these various stages, and each one was had a different shape to it. And we had to figure out the shapes that you could sort of identify, so you could get a sense of going in and coming out. And the thing about that Death Star is it's very nice to be in that large central reactor area is very huge, and then coming back into these little tiny tunnels that are, just a huge change in space.